integrity requires being decisive. Why is that? Well, because integrity is pretty rare. Most people do not have very high integrity. And so if you have some kind of vision for a great life, for having a great impact on the world, for your life purpose, for being creative, artistic, whatever, and then you go about trying to execute on that vision, you're going to need integrity to execute on that vision. And everybody around you, your friends, your family, your coworkers, and just random people who are observing you, they're all going to start criticizing you, nitpicking what you're doing, creating doubt in your mind, and infecting you with their own lack of integrity. You are going to have to stand up for your top values in the face of an unconscious world and an unconscious society. Remember, we are living right now in the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages did not end 1,000 years ago. We're still in the Dark Ages. And if you want to bring some light into the world, you're going to have to contend with the darkness that's going to try to snuff out the light. Most people live like animals along a path of least resistance. Most people are not decisive. They're not clear. They're not living according to their values. They are not ambitious. They are not seeking to bring light into the world. They are not making decisions for themselves. They are letting society and culture decide for them by programming their mind with memes and ideology. And most people have very little integrity because all they're doing is they're just struggling to survive. They're just doing the thing that will allow them to survive to the next day and throughout the next week. They're not thinking very far. They're not interested in developing themselves. They're not interested in health and holism, not individually, but also not collectively. They're not properly educated. They're not very conscious. They're not doing spiritual practices. They're not eating healthy. None of these things. They're just chasing their base instincts, cravings, and desires, and avoiding their deepest fears. That's what's controlling most people. They're like puppets on strings. And even the ones that think that they're above it, they're still puppets on strings. The ones that think that they're contrarians and that are challenging mainstream society, those people are especially puppets on strings. They're doing all that unconsciously with very little integrity. So if you want to be a high integrity person, a high consciousness person, you're going to have to hold yourself to a much higher standard. Because society, other people, they will not hold you to a high enough standard because their own standards are so low. You're going to have to set the standard for yourself and for everybody else around you. This is what it means to be a conscious leader. And to set this standard and to live by this standard, to meet this high standard of your own, you're going to have to make some bold decisions, and you have to stick with them in the face of all the darkness that surrounds you, all the ignorance and unconsciousness that surrounds you, all the groupthink and the mass paranoia and hysteria, the culture wars and all the distractions, all the petty human bullshit that's around you. This is all going to be trying to distract you and tempt you to break your integrity. And you're going to have to make a decision. You know, one of the most important decisions you can make in your life is whether you want to be a high integrity person or not. Being decisive gives you a sense of direction and clarity of mind and peace of mind. It's very relieving to know what you're doing in your life, what your ultimate mission is, the big picture, because then that informs what you're doing on a micro level. Once you got the macro level figured out, you can easily figure out what you got to do at the micro level every single day. And when this is all aligned with your top values, it's very fulfilling, it's very rewarding, and it gives you a certain groundedness and stability in the face of chaos and distraction and hysteria that's all around you. You got a purpose, you got a mission, you're on it, your mind is clear, you know what your values are, you know what the right decisions are, you know you're going to be a high integrity person. This gives you enormous peace of mind to know that you don't need to compromise on these things and that you know where you're going. That's one of the benefits of being decisive. When you're indecisive, you're wishy-washy, you're like a leaf blowing in the wind. Anybody can pull you in one direction or the next. Every little, bump in the road, every little hysteria in the news cycle, it's got you all riled up and you're running around, you're ungrounded. You're very easily influenced and misled. You cannot create a good life without being clear about what you want. First of all, you have to be clear that you want to create the good life. Most people don't know what they want. They're very unclear. And in fact, clarity itself should be a core value of yours. I'm going to have a whole episode in the future just about the value of clarity, because it's one of those values that usually people don't think about when they're thinking about their values. But clarity is a very powerful potential value, because clarity is what allows you to be decisive. You can't be decisive unless you know what you really want out of life. Once you figure that out, being decisive is rather easy. So I recommend that you make a sort of principled decision to never be squishy, unclear, mumbly, and wishy-washy. Not in your language or your communication, not in the decisions that you're making in your life, not in the projects that you're undertaking, not in the people you're choosing to allow into your life or not. Like, be clear about all those things. Set that as a goal for yourself, is that kind of inner clarity. And then once you have that clarity, that's what's required to also become a conscious leader. Because most people are unclear, so what they need somebody to follow who is clear. And I'll have an episode about conscious leadership in the future coming soon as well. Have you ever even sat down in your life and made a decision about who you want to be? Like, what kind of character do you want to be? When people look at you or they talk about you behind your back, what do you want them to say about you? What do you want them to perceive your highest values to be? And then what kind of actions would you have to take? How would you have to carry yourself so that people felt your values without you even having to explicitly tell them what your values are? They just know what your values are because of the way that you carry yourself and the way that you embody them in your life. So think about that. Sit down and spend a couple hours just thinking about, what kind of character do I want to be? How do I want others to perceive me? Do I want others to perceive me as somebody whose top value is money or sex or laziness or depression or judgment and hatred or dogmatism and closed-mindedness or lack of health? Think about that.